What's going on, YouTube? It's Bad Takes with Bad Takes in Football, back with another episode. Gonna dive into was probably the most anticipated preseason game of this season. I'm talking about the Carolina Panthers versus the Cleveland Browns. Bryce Young competing against Shedeur Sanders, rookie out of Colorado. Before I get into it, please make sure you subscribe, like, comment. On my journey to 100 subscribers, really appreciate all the help, any support I get. Please comment, tell me what you think about this game, any other takes that you want me to talk about. Excited to dive into today's topic. Now, talking about this Cleveland Browns Carolina Panthers game. This was a matchup between former first pick Bryce Young, who's in his third year, against Shedeur Sanders, 2025 fifth round pick for the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, a lot of hype around Shedeur Sanders, but on the other side, Carolina Panther fans are asking, is this going to be the year we see a jump from Bryce Young? So, really, to get into this and what I saw from this game, I think I was impressed by both sides of this, right? I think Shedeur Sanders was really poised in the pocket. He was constantly looking downfield to find the open receiver. Bryce Young was doing the same thing. Bryce Young was extending plays. He was directing traffic. He had some great connections with his rookie wide receiver, Tet McMillan, who had 2 receptions for 43 yards, the longest being 30 yards. And then he even had a great touchdown pass to his second-year receiver, Coker, who was in the corner of the end zone. Bryce Young rolled out, was able to direct Coker to an open spot, and connected with him for a touchdown. Now, the final score of this game was 30-10. The Cleveland Browns won. And, I would say that from a quarterback competition perspective, as well as a quarterback spotlight perspective, I'll give it to Shedeur Sanders. I'm not just going along with the pundits here. You're talking again about a 5th round pick. Now, he was going up against a second team defense, but at the same time, he also had his second team weapons. He had his second team line that was in there. And again, he looked poised in the pocket. He looked calm. He was constantly looking for the open receiver, extending plays. I think the biggest mistake Shedeur Sanders made in this game was sometimes he tried to extend the play too much, and he found himself running in the backfield, turning one side to the other, just turning back and forth, looking to see if there's an open receiver. The Carolina Panthers did a good job of clamping onto their receivers, and so generally he had to throw the ball away. But overall, Shedeur Sanders, he went 14 for 23, 138 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Shedeur Sanders had about 103 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half, right? He was 11 for 18 for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half. So he did most of his damage in the first half. He did play a fair amount in the third quarter, didn't necessarily get a lot of production, but I would say overall for a 5th round pick, especially someone that had the hype that he had around him, I am very impressed with how Shedeur Sanders played. I was expecting him to really crumble a little bit under the pressure, right? Again, I mentioned this before. I think this was probably going to be the most watched preseason game of the season, and I don't think Shedeur Sanders disappointed. If I'm Dylan Gabriel, who has a hamstring issue that he's dealing with, I'm going to coach tomorrow and saying, hey, coach, my hamstring's good. I'm ready to play, because he has some work to do in order to compete with Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders went out there and he performed. I'm not saying that he blew, the Panthers out of the stadium, right? But he managed that game. He made some great passes. There's a couple he probably wishes he had back. There was an open pass he had where he threw a floater over 2 defenders, wasn't able to connect with the receiver there. But again, he showed poise and he showed the ability to extend plays and try to find the open receiver. So I was impressed with him from that perspective. Now, Bryce Young, again, third-year quarterback now at this point. He was the first pick in the draft for the Panthers, and he only played in 2 series, right? So keep this in mind. But he went 4 for 6 for 58 yards and 1 touchdown. Again, his biggest pass was to Tet McMillan, the rookie receiver, who is a big body and what I will say is an impressive receiver. I think he's going to have a really good year with Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young is going to find him early and often. Bryce Young isn't the tallest quarterback. And so when you have a big-bodied receiver like Ted McMillan that you can see over the offensive and defensive line, you're going to get targeted early and often. And he showed that in this game. Not just from Bryce Young, but Ted McMillan had 5 targets, again, from those 2 receptions. This was against the Browns' second-team defense, and Bryce Young should be set to a higher standard than Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion. I think that's something that people need to kind of take a step back and think about when they look at Bryce Young. All those Panthers fans, I'm sure you're excited about what Bryce Young was able to do in this game. But again, this was against a second-team defense. You had all of your weapons out there, including Adam Thielen. I don't think anyone, including myself, was really expecting to see Adam Thielen out there, an older receiver, reliable but older. He was out there with Bryce Young in those first couple series and even caught a pass or 2. So I think going forward, what you're going to want to see is, can Bryce Young do this against a first-team defense? Can Ted McMillan do this against a number 1 cornerback? On the other side, can Shedeur Sanders stay consistent? Can he keep this momentum going into the next preseason games? I know that Dillon Gabriel is set to start against the Eagles' next preseason game, but I can't help but expect Shedeur Sanders to get a fair amount of snaps. I think he showed himself in this game that he deserves those. So that's going to be a big aspect for the Browns moving forward is, can he stay consistent? Can he use this momentum moving forward to understand, hey, I do belong here, as long as I keep working at it and continue to dive into the playbook. I think that's going to be a huge aspect for Shedeur Sanders, is diving into that playbook, understanding how to read defenses, and then use his skills to his ability, which to me right now looks like he's good at extending plays and looking downfield to find the open man. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, tell me your takes. This is Bad Takes from Bad Takes in Football, signing out.